Imagine dedicating your entire professional life to protecting digital systems, to building defenses. You're making the online world fundamentally safer for everyone.
Yeah.
You're an expert, deeply ethical, driven by this real commitment to doing what's right. But then one day, those very good intentions, those responsible actions you took to help, they inexplicably land you behind bars. It sounds like something out of a movie, doesn't it? A terrifying scenario.
Yeah.
Yet for one cybersecurity professional, this wasn't fiction. This was a bewildering and ultimately transformative reality.
It truly is a story that profoundly challenges our understanding of what justice truly means in the digital age. It questions ethical responsibility and highlights this immense, dangerous disconnect that can exist between the rapid pace of technology and the slow, often, frankly, antiquated march of legal frameworks.
Right.
What's fascinating here is how someone dedicated to prevention and protection ended up being a victim of the very system he tried to help safeguard. That profound disconnect is exactly what we're going to unpack today.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because Alberto Daniel Hill's story, it isn't just about one man's ordeal. No, it's a stark mirror. It reflects how woefully our legal systems sometimes lag behind the digital world we all live in now. Today, we're embarking on a deep dive into that remarkable, unsettling, and honestly inspiring true story of Alberto Daniel Hill. He's a highly accomplished computer engineer and ethical hacker from Uruguay.
Right.
And his journey is just this profound paradox.
Yeah.
Here's a man whose responsible disclosure of critical digital vulnerabilities led to his arrest and an astonishing 8-month incarceration.
8 months.
8 months,
Yeah.
despite clear, documented efforts to assist the authorities.
Our mission in this deep dive is to really unpack the layers of this unbelievable tale. We'll explore how his professional tools, things he used for his job, were tragically misconstrued as, hacker paraphernalia. We'll delve into how his experience became a powerful, undeniable catalyst for legal reform, showcasing immense resilience and a commitment to preventing similar injustices for you and others in the cybersecurity world.
It's more than just tech and law, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. This story also delves into the heart of human connection, unexpected paths to building credibility, and the sheer unexpected power of radical transparency in our complex digital world.
Okay, let's unpack this. To truly grasp the gravity of Alberto's story and the systemic failures it exposes, we first need to appreciate who he is, his background, and the ethical imperative that seems to have always driven his work.
Definitely.
This isn't just some casual computer enthusiast we're talking about. Alberto Daniel Hill is, by any measure, an accomplished, seasoned professional.
His connection to computers started incredibly early. We're talking 1983. He was just 10 years old.
Wow, 83.
Yeah. His very first machine was a Sinclair Spectrum Plus, an iconic machine back then with a mere 48 kilobytes of RAM.
48K, I know.
And 1983, just owning a machine like that, let alone engaging with it deeply, already set a 10-year-old apart. It really speaks to this early fascination that just grew, and it grew quickly.
Indeed. By age 14, so around 1987, Alberto performed what he calls his very first hack. He used basic assembler code, which is a low-level programming language that talks directly to the computer's hardware, to alter a soccer game called Emilio Ano.
Okay.
And what's even more remarkable, he sent this little modification to a big Spanish magazine, and they actually published it.
No way. Published it.
Yeah. It wasn't malicious at all, just playful, curious, an early sign of his talent for understanding systems, taking them apart, maybe tweaking them a bit.
That playful curiosity didn't just fade. It matured into this really robust 2-decade-plus professional career. He's not just a computer engineer. He's got extensive experience across the whole spectrum. Information security consulting, computer forensics, ethical hacking, IT security management, the works.
He really covered the bases.
Totally. And the qualifications back it up. He's PMP certified, that's project management professional, so he can lead complex tech projects.
Right.
He specialized in ISO IAS 27000 standards since 2011. Those are the international gold standards for information security management, basically how to build and run secure digital environments properly.
Crucial stuff.
Absolutely. He also has his Cybersecurity Fundamental Certificate, the CSX from ISACA, which earned him platinum membership there.
Yeah.
That underlines his knowledge and commitment. Plus, he's been a volunteer with the OWASP Uruguay chapter since 2012.
OWASP, yeah. Big name in security.
Exactly. OWASP, the Open Web Application Security Project, is a significant nonprofit community in the security world, and he's recognized globally, too, for his expertise in blockchain and cryptocurrencies. He speaks at major international security events like EcoArt.
So his resume just screams credibility and expertise, don't you think?
It absolutely does. And these credentials, they directly tie into his very clear self-definition. Alberto is extremely precise about this. He states, quote, "I am an ethical hacker and no other hacker.
Okay.
I conduct a lot of research to know the tools that the bad guys use, but I am not a criminal, and money is not the motivator for me to do this stuff." So he draws a very firm line about his intentions.
A very firm line. He identifies as a gray hat, right?
Yes, a very firm line. He sees himself as what some people call a gray hat hacker, operating close to that ambiguous line between the purely defensive white hats and the malicious black hats.
So why operate there? What's the thinking?
His rationale, as he explains it, is that you have to intimately understand the enemy's tools, their methods, the vulnerabilities they look for to better defend against them. It's a strategic choice, immersing himself in maybe the darker corners, but not for bad reasons. It's necessary, he feels, to truly secure systems and stay ahead of threats.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. Know your enemy. And what's even more crucial to understanding his later actions, I think, is that he wasn't a stranger to the legal system's flaws. Not at all. Not before his own ordeal.
No, that's a key point. Back in 2004, he actually served as the very first computer forensics expert in a criminal case in Uruguay.
The first one?
The first. The case involved child pornography, tragically, and it was during that harrowing experience that he first saw significant issues with how law enforcement and the judiciary handled digital evidence.
What kind of issues did he see?
Well, he saw the disconnect firsthand.
Mm-hmm.
Procedural missteps, a profound lack of technical understanding within the system. That early exposure, seeing how the judicial process struggled with digital evidence, probably shaped his later decisions about responsible disclosure.
Right.
He wasn't just some random person finding a flaw. He had professional first-hand experience with digital evidence, chain of custody, the proper procedures. He understood the stakes involved.
That's vital context, which brings us to the initial discoveries and his acts of responsible disclosure. What he just saw of an act of conscience, a professional obligation. For our listeners, responsible disclosure is the ethical practice of identifying security vulnerabilities in a system and then privately reporting them to the affected organization so they can be fixed before malicious actors exploit them.
Exactly.
And it all started pretty normally, didn't it? Really innocuously.
Yeah.
In October 2014, his ex-partner just asked him for a simple favor. Book an appointment on her medical care provider's website, Circulo Católico.
Just a normal task.
Just a mundane, everyday task. And within moments of trying to help, his professional instincts just kicked in. He hits this annoying CAPI-TCHA on the login page. We've all been there, right?
We certainly have. So, being an expert, he looks for a way around it, and he quickly finds he can bypass it just by deleting a parameter in the URL in the browser's address bar.
Okay, simple tweak.
Simple tweak, and while that might be a bit insecure, it's not world-ending on its own. But then the truly alarming flaw emerged. He gained full administrator access to the entire system using admin for the username and admin for the password.
Admin. Seriously.
Admin. This wasn't some sophisticated zero-day exploit. This was just a glaring, fundamental security oversight, a wide-open backdoor that any determined individual could have stumbled upon.
And the implications of that admin access to a medical provider are massive. This wasn't just bypassing a login. Admin access meant theoretical control over potentially 200,000 patient health records.
Oh my God.
Imagine the privacy nightmare, the ethical alarm bells ringing for a cybersecurity professional like him. It also meant access to sensitive financial reports, even medication stock levels. The gravity of that situation is just immense.
It really is.
Sensitive data like personal medical records has to be protected at the highest level, and this was critically exposed.
Absolutely critical. And his response, to his credit, was immediate and undeniably ethical. Within literally 5 minutes of finding this, Alberto emails Uruguay's CERT, their computer emergency response team at cert.y, reports the vulnerabilities.
5 minutes. That's fast.
Super fast. That's exactly what you're supposed to do. Responsible Disclosure 101, textbook. Identify a serious flaw, report it to the right people so it gets fixed before the bad guys find it. It's the gold standard. It protects everyone.
Did they respond?
And cert.y actually responded quickly. They confirmed his findings pretty fast, less than 2 hours. They replied, acknowledged he was right about the flaws, so problem reported, confirmed, case closed.
Or so he thought.
For Alberto, that's what he thought. He believed he'd done his part, protected sensitive data, fulfilled his ethical duty. He said he just forgot about the website and its vulnerabilities, figured it was now the company's problem to fix. Good deed done. Move on.
Until the deja vu moment, which is somewhat bizarre and perhaps foreshadows the systemic issues. A year later, April 2015, his ex-partner, totally unaware of the first incident, asks him again to access the same Circulo Cattolico site.
The same site again.
The same site. And once more, within like 15 minutes, Alberto gained access to all sorts of sensitive information. This time, even simpler. No username or password needed at all. He just modified some URL parameters. Probably a different flaw, but just as bad.
Wow. So he reports it again.
Yep. So he reports it again. Same ethical impulse. Within 5 minutes, emails, cert.ioi again. He acted consistently, ethically, never thought about misusing it or gaining anything. For him, it was just about protecting data that should have been secure.
Okay, now there's one more incident he admits to, which became a bit of a sticking point later, right? December 2016.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yes, he was trying to get his ex-partner's clinical exam results. Needed them for a blood donation certificate or something. The site had this annoying 3-month search limit.
Oh, those are frustrating.
Right. So instead of doing multiple tedious searches for something years old, he found a way around that limit to search across 9 years of data at once, purely trying to save time.
Okay, makes sense.
But he admits his action, designed purely for convenience, inadvertently caused the server to briefly go down. He takes full responsibility for that technical hiccup, but he's emphatic. It was not malicious, just a shortcut, not sabotage, not data theft.
Looking back on all this, though, the reporting, the server issue, how does he feel now?
Well, with the painful clarity of hindsight, he admits to this profound sense of regret, even naivete. He openly says he wishes he'd never reported the issues at all.
Really? He regrets helping.
Yeah. He feels he tried to help a company he didn't even know, no incentive, no reward, just driven by ethics. And he never expected his life to be turned upside down because of it. That's right. That really highlights a critical challenge for ethical hackers, doesn't it? The personal risk you take doing the right thing, especially if the system, the laws, aren't ready for it.
An act of altruism becomes a grave personal risk.
In an ill-equipped environment, exactly. This raises an important question. What's the personal cost of doing the right thing? Alberto, with painful hindsight, says he profoundly regrets ever reporting those issues, believing he tried to help a company without incentive, only for his life to be turned upside down.
So how did an ethical hacker end up being labeled Uruguay's first hacker jailed? September 2017 is when Alberto's life just took this dramatic, terrifying turn. The police called his apartment, but he wasn't there. His landlord gave him the message, and he just went down to the station the next day, totally unsuspecting, nothing to hide.
No.
He goes to the local station.
Just voluntarily.
Voluntarily. And this is where it shifts dramatically. Local police make a routine call to Interpol, and suddenly everything changes. The speed, the severity, it all ramps up.
Alberto describes this sudden, jarring shift. He's arrested, handcuffed, stripped of his belongings, a routine he actually knew from his forensics work. But this time, the reason totally unknown to him.
Did they tell him his rights? Why he was being arrested?
He specifically says the local cops did not tell me my rights or the reason for the arrest, which immediately raises serious flags about basic legal protections and due process in Uruguay at that moment.
So when did he find out why?
Not until he was at the Interpol facilities in Montevideo, they finally tell him, arrested for a cybercrime against Circulo Cattolico.
And his reaction?
And his reaction, here's the heartbreaking part, he initially felt great relief.
Relief? Why relief?
Relief, why? Because he distinctly remembered helping them, reporting vulnerabilities, not harming them. He genuinely thought, okay, this is just a terrible misunderstanding. I'll explain it. It'll clear up.
This is just incredibly sad, thinking it's a mistake you can easily fix.
Right. But after 2 hours of what he called honest, open questioning, patiently explaining everything, they blindsided him. The final devastating question. Had he sent an email demanding Bitcoin payment for not disclosing sensitive medical records?
Extortion? Where did it even come from?
Exactly. He naturally, vehemently denied it. It was a pivotal, terrifying moment, introducing this element extortion that was just completely alien to his actions, his motives, his entire professional life. A total fabrication that would derail everything.
Which leads us straight to the evidence, or lack thereof. The investigation sounds profoundly flawed from the start.
Oh, deeply flawed. Circulo Cattolico reported a hacking attack. Okay, but how they provided their evidence was fundamentally, glaringly wrong. They gave Circulo Cattolico firewall logs in printed format.
Printed logs. You cannot be serious.
Dead serious. Alberto, the computer forensics expert, immediately points out the huge error. Digital evidence should be preserved as it is and stored in its original format. You need a clear, documented chain of custody.
Of course. Basic procedure.
Basic. He put it bluntly. What is a printout of logs? I could be printing out logs right now and accusing half of the population of Uruguay of hacking. It just emphasizes the complete lack of verifiable data. It was legally useless.
So without original, untampered digital logs, you can't verify authenticity, trace IPs definitively, prove anything. The foundation of their case was compromised from the get-go.
Completely.
So why pursue him based on that? It seems incredibly weak.
Alberto speculates maybe because he was the only one who had ethically reported the flaws. Perhaps the authorities felt frustrated, maybe they lacked leads or the ability for a real cyber investigation, so they decided to go for the easy win and focus on him, the path of least resistance.
Sounds cynical, but maybe understandable given the pressure to close cases, even if it means targeting the most convenient person.
It's a possibility. So what other evidence did they try to use? They claimed ISP records linked his IP address to the alleged extortion email and one connection to the Círculo Católico website.
Okay, but correlation isn't causation.
Exactly. And his Bitcoin, his legitimate ownership of some Bitcoin, pretty common for someone in tech and cybersecurity, was used to his detriment. Made him look suspicious to investigators who didn't understand it. But still, no proof of login, data download, no detailed, verifiable info provided to him. And crucially, nothing on those unreliable printouts showed him actually logging in or taking data.
And then the raid on his house, the hacker paraphernalia.
Yes. First off, the warrant misspelled his name. Alva vote Daniel Hill Antonioi. Not even right.
Seriously?
Yeah. During the raid, Interpol seizes his professional tools and completely misrepresents them as definitive proof of guilt. What kinds of items? Physical Bitcoin souvenirs, like collectible coins.
Electable coins, not actual crypto.
No. He found it embarrassing. They mistook them for actual crypto. An anonymous mask. He pointed out, I have 20 more anonymous masks. Even Lego sells anonymous masks. It's a cultural thing.
Right, it's just a symbol.
And a USB killer. Now, to an ethical hacker, that's a specific pen testing tool. You use it to test hardware resilience against voltage surges.
A diagnostic tool.
Exactly. To law enforcement, though, it was tragically misunderstood as just proof of malicious intent. It just screams a profound, dangerous lack of technical literacy.
And this misunderstanding, this inability to tell tools from intent, it stems from something deeper, right? The laws themselves.
Exactly. Uruguay's outdated laws and the profound ignorance within the justice system about cybercrime. Here's the crucial bit. Alberto wasn't even investigated for hacking or unauthorized access.
Tell me not. That seems like the obvious charge.
Not because, as he pointed out, these things at the time were not actual crimes. Our country's penal code did not have these offenses, and it still doesn't.
Wait, hacking itself wasn't illegal?
Pretty much. That is staggering. Uruguayan law then, and largely still now, focused heavily on disclosure or alteration of documents and information. It was written with physical documents and tangible theft in mind, failing to account for the non-corporeal nature of digital data and the ease and scale of its replication or access.
Stuck in the past.
Totally. He says, if I decided to hack a website today from my home IP address, the police would arrive, but they would not be able to charge me unless I disclosed, threatened to disclose, or alter information. He calls the law stuck in the 1900s, completely out of step.
So if they couldn't charge him with hacking, they had to shoehorn his actions into existing ill-fitting laws.
Precisely. So he was processed for attempted extortion, minimum 4 years prison, and fraudulent knowledge of secret information, which was just a fine, reframing ethical reporting as extortion. That's perverse.
It speaks volumes about the system's inability to understand or prosecute real cybercrime. They resorted to old interpretations, and the extortion charge itself had glaring holes.
A massive one, a primary one. The alleged extortion email demanding Bitcoin, it had no payment address.
No address. How would the extortionist even get paid?
Exactly. Alberto points this out. Logically, it makes no sense. He says the prosecutor reportedly just overlooked this massive, obvious detail, a fundamental flaw that should have dismissed the extortion claim immediately. Unbelievable.
Just ignored it. And then the Cert I director's testimony. That sounds like a devastating twist.
Oh, it was. The very person at Cert I who had quickly confirmed Alberto's 2014 and 2015 reports verified his responsible actions. What did he say in court?
What?
Devastatingly, he claimed during the judicial process that he could not recall or find records of Alberto's reports.
Couldn't recall after confirming them via email. How?
Alberto calls it inexplicable, says, "It still makes me wonder why." But that testimony fundamentally destroyed his defense. The judge interpreted it as Alberto lying about reporting the flaws, undermined his entire credibility. His only official proof was effectively stripped away.
So his proof just vanished. And then came the coercion. The layers of injustice just kept piling up. He spent the whole day in custody, confused, desperately wishing he had a lawyer. Then this Interpol agent, aggressive, intimidating, refused to give his name or badge number, starts coercing a confession with chilling threats against his loved ones.
What kind of threats?
The agent explicitly threatened him. Confess this, or we're going to go get your mother. We're going to take her to prison. She's going to have a very bad time. We will do the same with your girlfriend. You choose.
That's truly horrifying. Putting him in that position, imagine the duress. Disoriented, vulnerable, no lawyer, facing that horrific ultimatum against your family.
Unthinkable pressure.
His immediate thought, he said, was, what passed through my mind was, I want this to end now. So he confessed.
He confessed, even though he didn't do it.
He confessed, believing, perhaps naively in hindsight, that he could later prove without a doubt that he didn't do anything because there would be no records of him doing anything malicious. He thought the lack of evidence would exonerate him eventually.
But it didn't work out that way.
No, he quickly, tragically realized it didn't matter. His forced confession, obtained under extreme duress, was deemed enough. The proof part had no value, he noted. It's just a stark, disturbing picture of how a flawed system, perhaps desperate for a conviction, can prioritize a confession, however obtained, over actual verifiable evidence, leading to profound injustice.
This complete unraveling led directly to Part 3. Life behind bars and the painful irony of what he experienced as justice. Just 2 days after his arrest, September 11, 2017, the judge orders his preventive detention, locked up before trial. On what grounds?
The justifications were bewildering, bordering on absurd. First, risk of fleeing the country, which Alberto found ridiculous given his established life, family, and career in Uruguay.
Right, makes no sense.
And the second reason, get this, his advanced computer knowledge meant he could alter the rest of the processes by mentally altering evidence stored at Interpol.
Mentally altering evidence?
Yeah.
That's quite a superpower.
Indeed. Alberto quipped he wished he had such powers. But seriously, it was an absurd, fantastical reason to lock him up. It speaks chilling volumes about the judge's profound lack of understanding of technology, digital evidence, and perhaps even basic reality. Dangerous ignorance when wielded by those deciding fates.
That's terrifying.
It is. But amidst all this, there was a strange paradox in his prison experience. Almost unbelievable given the circumstances. His relationship with the actual prison guards, in stark contrast to the cybercrime police.
How was that?
He describes his relationship with the guards as great, called them great human beings, said he's still in touch with them today. It highlights the strange, unsettling dichotomy within the system, moments of humanity in an otherwise dehumanizing process.
But the stress, the overall toll, must have been immense.
Devastating. Around March or April 2018, just months into his incarceration, he suffered a severe health crisis. He fell into a coma for 3 hours.
A coma. In prison.
A coma. Woke up in the ICU of Dasno Hospital. He described himself as being as good as dead. It just underscores the brutal, undeniable human cost, the immense psychological and physiological stress of being unjustly imprisoned, fighting a system that doesn't understand you.
Absolutely awful. And then another bizarre twist emerges. The transitional release. Something seemed off about that.
Yes, the curious case of his transitional release hints at perhaps an unseen, possibly corrupt hand at play. In February 2018, while still locked up, an unnamed person visits Alberto in prison.
Okay.
This visitor starts pressing him about opening a bank account when he gets out, revealing that they, the visitor, had significant debts. A highly unusual, unsettling conversation for a prison visit.
Very strange indeed.
Yep.
And then what happened?
Shortly after this suspicious visit, mid-February 2018, Alberto gets granted an extraordinary 72 hours of weekly transitional release from prison.
72 hours a week. It's highly unusual, isn't it? Especially for a first-time grant.
Extremely. So unusual that even the prison director felt compelled to call the judge to confirm it. He'd never seen such an immediate, extensive privilege granted so quickly. It certainly raised red flags for everyone involved.
So the implication is strong and disturbing. It's heavily implied This unprecedented freedom is directly connected to that visitor's financial scheme.
It certainly suggests the judge's decision might have been influenced by external pressures, perhaps personal gain or corruption, rather than the legal reasons used to detain him initially. What does that say about the impartiality of the whole process?
It makes you wonder about the integrity of the entire system. Could a man's freedom or continued incarceration be swayed by outside influences? For Alberto, it must have been jarring to think even his path out might be tangled in something murky.
Definitely.
So how did he finally get fully released?
In May 2018, after 8 grueling months, his lawyers successfully appealed the judge's decision. Alberto was finally released, but only after paying a hefty $10,000 bail.
$10,000 bail after all that.
And stepping back into the world, that must have been a moment of clarity for him, a harsh awakening. It solidified this profound, bitter realization about the justice system he'd maybe once believed in. What was that realization?
What did he say?
It crystallized this devastating understanding, he reflected. Justice is a beautiful word, but in practice, maybe it stays there in a beautiful word, and justice does not really exist.
Wow.
But there are injustices, depending on who you are, how much power you have, how much money you have. He said he realized how unjust it is and how unnecessarily people suffer. A stark personal lesson in inequity, punished for doing right while others may have navigated the system differently.
It solidified this profound, bitter realization for him. Justice is a beautiful word, but in practice, maybe it stays there in a beautiful word. And justice does not really exist. There are injustices depending on who you are.
Powerful words.
After enduring all that, 8 months behind bars for something he didn't do, Alberto's life was just irrevocably altered. This brings us to the ripple effect. The personal scars, yes, but also this paradoxical professional rebound.
Indeed. He described a dramatic personal transformation. He went from being, in his words, an upper higher class guy who had it all in life, successful career, relationship, etc., to a person with PTSD, under treatment.
PTSD, that's serious. The toll is immense.
Huge. He says he never thought it could affect a life so much. His family dynamics shifted drastically, too. It became just him and his mother, a smaller, tighter circle forged through that shared trauma, a life completely turned upside down.
But did anything positive come from it? Did he find any sort of upside?
He says he gained a new, less one-sided vision of the world, started understanding things he didn't ever care to understand before, particularly the injustices faced by people from different walks of life within legal systems. It forced him to confront realities he'd perhaps had the privilege to ignore before.
And legally, his name is cleared now. The case is closed.
Yes, his criminal case was officially closed, penal record cleared, in early 2022. A legal vindication, which should bring closure, right?
You'd think so.
Yep.
But the trauma remains.
Absolutely. But Alberto acknowledges the scars of all this. Obviously, one will carry forever. It's a trauma I hope doesn't happen to any of you. This underscores the deep, long-lasting psychological toll, even after legal exoneration. The emotional recovery is a much longer road.
Yet, here's where it gets really fascinating, paradoxical almost. His professional rebound that defied expectations, didn't it?
Completely. After his release initially, he faced that common post-prison employment challenge, no job offers immediately. But then something truly extraordinary happened. Quote, "The number of offers I have received since I was released is something hard to believe."
Job offers started pouring in after being imprisoned for alleged cybercrime.
Exactly. His market value, he says, jumped to the moon after being in prison. He started getting dream jobs, offers. He believes his is probably the only field in which this happens.
That's incredible, and such a stark contrast to what usually happens, isn't it?
A heartbreaking contrast to the general difficulty ex-convicts face finding any good employment, let alone top-tier positions. It's incredibly unusual, where the notoriety somehow made him more sought after in the specialized cybersecurity world. Despite the immense personal trauma and PTSD diagnosis, Alberto's experience took a paradoxical turn that defied expectations.
So how did Alberto channel this trauma into a force for change? Seems like he didn't just, fade away.
Not at all. Well, his personal ordeal became a springboard for activism and awareness. He's actively focused now on learning the legal system's intricacies in Uruguay, building global contacts in cyber and law, and most importantly, tirelessly spreading his story using every platform available.
Like what? What platforms is he using?
Compelling interviews like on Osint.me, featured on popular podcasts like Darknet Diaries, reaching huge audiences. He even has his own podcast, Log Into Hell, aptly named, where he delves deeper.
Yes.
And powerful public speaking, like his To Hell and Back talk at EcoArt 2022, sharing intimate details and hard evidence, leveraging every channel.
And the goal is clear and impactful. Prevent similar injustices.
Absolutely. He puts it plainly, like a principle.
Yeah.
When a problem is detected in a system and that problem causes harm to people, what do? You talk about it, you create awareness. People have to understand there's a problem to start treating it.
So he's not just recounting the past.
No, he's actively advising on cybersecurity laws, making his ordeal a direct catalyst for needed legal and systemic reform in Uruguay, turning pain into progress.
So we've seen his journey. Ethical hacker, prisoner, advocate. But what are the broader implications here, not just for Uruguay, but globally? That brings us to a call for change, the chilling effect, and the future of cyber law.
Right. The hard-learned lesson for Alberto himself, the guy who embodied responsible disclosure, is stark and sad. He says, "I will never, ever report a security flaw again. Never again."
That's a powerful statement, a complete reversal.
It is. He states he was forced to learn to manage truth strategically. When, who, where, how much info to share. This isn't just personal trauma speaking. It has profound, damaging implications for cybersecurity everywhere.
And it's had real effects in Uruguay already. Tangible consequences.
Oh, yes. After his case went public, Alberto notes many people in Uruguay stopped reporting security incidents to Cert High due to fear of similar consequences. So critical vulnerabilities are going unreported now.
That's the chilling effect. The suppression of good behavior due to fear of negative repercussions, directly undermining national cybersecurity efforts.
Precisely. Because ethical professionals are terrified of facing Alberto's fate. If the good guys are scared to speak up, the flaws remain open, everyone's less safe.
Is there any protection for reporters? Can Cert High shield them?
That's part of the problem. Cert High itself, the National Emergency Response Team, acknowledges it cannot provide legal guarantees or immunity for vulnerability reporters. So you're taking a huge risk when you step forward.
Wow, so it's a gamble.
It creates an environment where good intentions can literally be punished. This erodes the trust needed for a robust national cyber defense. People in Uruguay now contact Alberto directly, he says, almost like a confessional, because they did not trust official channels, fearing they'd end up like Alberto.
That's a fundamental breakdown of trust in official channels, with people contacting Alberto directly instead. He's become an unofficial clearinghouse out of fear.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Alberto repeatedly emphasizes what he sees as the ignorance and incompetence of the people who decide the future of others in these cases. He equates it to asking him, a cyber expert, for a medical opinion on someone's future. I don't know anything about that.
Right.
It highlights the terrifying absurdity of non-technical people making life-altering decisions in highly technical cases without understanding the basics.
And the irony reached almost unbelievable levels recently. November 2021, an Interpol agent contacts Alberto.
Which agent?
The same agent who aggressively interrogated him, coerced the false confession, reaches out to Alberto in a public Twitter space.
That's unbelievable. What did he want?
The request to teach Interpol about cryptocurrencies and fraud because of their lack of internal knowledge and rising fraud cases.
So let me get this straight. The system that wrongly jailed him for alleged cybercrime now needs him to teach them the basics.
Think about it. It's stunning, almost comedic, but deeply tragic. A perfect, if painful, illustration of the very problem Alberto highlights.
Wow. Just wow.
And the incompetence wasn't just in court or interrogations. Evidence handling, too, continued with alarming mishandling. His confiscated cell phone kept powered on, connected to a network for a week, Sunday to Friday.
That's Forensics 101. You absolutely do not do that.
Huge red flag. It allows remote wiping, modification, or even planting of evidence with no documentation of who did what or why. He also found 18 large hard drives just thrown on the floor after the raid, completely unsecured.
Unsecured, just on the floor.
Yeah. And a valuable empty box returned, contents missing, vaguely claimed as seized electronic medium. It paints a deeply concerning picture of evidence handling at every stage, undermining the entire legal process.
Clearly, systemic changes are desperately needed. But Alberto's personal ordeal wasn't an isolated incident. He saw similar injustices play out, particularly in the case of a young hacker named Vladdy. Could you tell us more about that?
Absolutely. The Vladdy case is incredibly resonant with Alberto's own experience, highlighting the systemic failures he tirelessly campaigns against. Vladdy was an 18-year-old hacker arrested for alleged cyber incidents, specifically defacements of several Uruguayan entities, El País Uruguay, Guabas Turismo, and various government entities.
Okay, defacement, so changing website appearances.
Primarily. Now, what's crucial here is the counter-narrative provided by Gob Ethereum, another entity closely following these cases. Gob Ethereum denied that Vladdy conducted major hacks, such as against Mides or Donaso. Instead, they framed his actions not as malicious breaches, but as activism or a form of free security testing.
Ah, so exposing flaws rather than stealing data.
Exactly. The defacements, they argued, were done to expose vulnerabilities, not to cause harm. They also emphasized that Vladdy primarily used OSINT open-source intelligence tools like Intelligence X and publicly filtered credentials, meaning he wasn't directly breaching government servers, but using information already exposed elsewhere.
Using public info, not hacking in.
Right. His Telegram bot, which was also a point of contention, supposedly used data from public breaches like InfoExperto, again, not directly from government sources.
So it's a case of intent and methods being severely misinterpreted, much like Alberto's. And how did traditional media and government react to this? Did they pick up on this nuance?
Alberto expressed deep frustration with traditional media. He noted their overwhelming silence regarding Gob Ethereum's counter-narrative. Despite his efforts to provide this alternative perspective via Twitter Spaces and by tagging journalists, the media largely ignored it, preferring to focus on garbage or attacking the messenger, meaning Alberto himself.
Attacking him for trying to provide context.
Yeah, often confusing him with other hackers or even calling him Nazi in some interviews. It's a clear example of media sensationalism overriding nuanced reporting.
That's a significant barrier to public understanding. And what about the authorities? Were they more receptive?
Alberto's critique of the government is equally sharp. He points to the continued ignorance and incompetence of authorities in handling cyber cases. This includes misinterpreting tools, just as they did with him, negligent evidence handling, and a profound lack of forensic proof in their accusations.
Same patterns repeating.
Exactly. He highlights the absence of a transparent expediente, a formal case file that would allow for proper legal defense. He also levied accusations of misallocation of resources and scapegoating.
Scapegoating how?
He argued that authorities pursued noisy activists, or small fish like Vladdy, instead of focusing on silent and dangerous predators, meaning organized cybercriminals and carding groups, who are causing massive financial damage. This, he suggested, creates an illusion of efficacy while real threats go unaddressed.
So, targeting visible, less harmful actors to appear proactive. And what about the legal system's approach to the charges themselves? Were they proportionate?
That's another major criticism. He criticized the disproportionate accusations, noting the legal system's failure to distinguish between different online activities. Defacements, which primarily aim to draw attention to vulnerabilities, were treated with the same severity as data theft or extortion, leading to severe, disproportionate charges.
Treating hacking like a monolithic crime, regardless of intent or impact.
Precisely. Furthermore, there was a stark lack of prevention focus. No government contact was made with Vladdy or other white hat actors to understand the exploited vulnerabilities, suggesting the focus was purely on blame and punishment, not on enhancing national cybersecurity.
So no effort to actually learn from the incidents and fix the underlying problems.
None reported. Alberto's argument here is that the government should be held accountable for data breaches due to their own negligence in securing systems, not just the individuals who exposed those flaws.
Those parallels with Alberto's own experience are striking. It highlights a recurring pattern of misunderstanding and misjudgment within the system. But this raises an important question. How did Alberto, with his complex past, manage to cultivate such a unique environment of radical transparency and trust, particularly in his online test space, that allowed these critical insights to emerge?
That's fascinating, isn't it? Alberto's strategy was simply not to hide his history. His book title is Log into Hell. He talks openly about his incarceration. He shares personal vulnerabilities, even admitting to being hacked or intentionally infecting his own computers to understand threats.
Thus he leads with vulnerability.
Exactly. This radical openness, paradoxically, created an environment where others felt incredibly safe to share their own experiences and vulnerabilities. It broke down barriers.
That willingness to be truly seen, flaws and all, makes him incredibly relatable and trustworthy in a way that polished perfection rarely is. Tell us about some of the unexpected revelations that came out of this test space.
The test space really was unscripted, and it yielded profound insights. For instance, there was Anna Rose, a victim advocate. Her philosophy is powerful. When I go through something negative, I have to turn it into something positive.
That's a great mindset.
It is. Her candid sharing, especially her bravery in joining an unfamiliar platform with a host who himself had a controversial past, demonstrated the deep trust Alberto inspired. Then there was the unexpected guest, Boston, a Nigerian Uber driver.
Anyway,
Alberto immediately defended him from stereotypes, saying, "I can guarantee you he's not a scammer." This led to a nuanced discussion about online crime in Nigeria, exposing the power torso, a term used to describe the untouchable influence of top criminals who often operate with impunity.
that's an incredible level of trust to get that kind of candid insight, especially on such a sensitive topic. What other personal stories emerged?
Another deeply personal revelation came from Alberto's fiancée. She shared the story of her ongoing divorce proceedings, during which her ex-husband falsely accused Alberto of being an online scammer to gain an advantage in court.
Wow, using his past against him in a personal dispute.
Exactly. Her trust in Alberto stemmed directly from his transparency radical, her words. She said, "I knew so much about him. He isn't hiding behind this some name or anonymous profile." It showcased how complete openness, even about deeply personal struggles, can forge incredibly strong bonds of trust and credibility.
That's truly compelling. And Alberto also assembled an impressive lineup of experts for what he called the main event, delving even deeper into online deception. Who was on that panel?
It was an unprecedented lineup, truly unique. He brought together Anna Rose again, the victim advocate, Brett Johnson, a reformed high-profile cybercriminal and famously called the original internet godfather,
Brett Johnson, yeah, big name.
Scorpio, a cybersecurity expert who had also been a scam victim herself, and Spider, a self-described black hat activist from Anonymous. This diverse panel created a truly multidimensional understanding.
That's an extraordinary blend of perspectives. Victim, perpetrator, expert victim, activist. What did they reveal?
Brett Johnson offered chilling insights into the psychology of the criminal, particularly their use of compartmentalization. He explained how perpetrators view victims merely as marks, devoid of empathy, seeing crime purely as a business model.
Detached, transactional view of harm.
Completely. Then Scorpio, as a stolen valor scam victim, highlighted human vulnerability. Her experience showed how even cybersecurity experts are susceptible to emotional manipulation and psychological hooks, demonstrating that intelligence doesn't equate to immunity from sophisticated social engineering.
Even experts can be victims.
Absolutely. Spiderby provided a fascinating, if controversial, perspective. He spoke openly about his past dark side involvement in romance scams and even supplying information for hitman services on the dark web.
Whoa, heavy stuff.
Very. But he also detailed his current work tracking and exposing online pedophiles using social engineering.
So, someone who has walked both sides of the line, what kind of technical details did Spider-Bee share? That must have been eye-opening.
Oh, he provided truly deep technical insights. He explained Stealer's malware, which automatically extracts credentials and sensitive data from compromised machines. He detailed drive-by downloads, where visiting a malicious website automatically installs malware without user interaction, and the automated nature of victim compromise.
Scary stuff. Effortless infection.
Extremely. In one astonishing revelation, Spiderby claimed to have controlled 27,000 compromised computers in Georgia and even caused the transport system there to offer free rides as a form of protest.
27,000 machines and disrupted transport.
That's what he claimed. He made further claims of compromising entire countries' government systems and accessing financial information. These accounts, from varied perspectives, illuminated the very real, very painful human consequences of online deception on individuals and families, from the targeting and psychological manipulation to the technical execution and devastating impact.
It sounds like the convergence of voices, victim advocate, reform perpetrator, expert victim, gray hat activist, provided a truly comprehensive view.
Exactly, a multidimensional understanding of online deception that you rarely get.
So after experiencing the sharp end of this digital divide, Alberto has clear proposals for how Uruguay and, by extension, the world, can bridge this critical knowledge gap. What are his key recommendations for fostering a path forward?
Well, this raises an important question. Why aren't these basic competencies standard? Alberto rightly points out the terrifying absurdity of non-technical people making life-altering decisions in highly technical
Right,
cases.
like the mental alteration justification.
Precisely. First, he advocates for mandatory digital forensics education. He believes compulsory training and certifications for police and judicial actors are essential, arguing that those deciding the future of others need a fundamental technical understanding.
Makes sense.
He also suggests creating interlocutors, trained technical experts to translate complex information for legal professionals, bridging that critical knowledge gap within the justice system.
That sounds like a fundamental and necessary step. A translator role, essentially. What about protecting ethical hackers like himself? How do we avoid that chilling effect?
He calls for robust reporting systems that actively protect ethical hackers. The current lack of legal guarantees or immunity, which CERT.UE cannot offer, is a huge deterrent. He wants to turn vulnerability reporting from a gamble into an encouraged public service.
So safe harbor laws or something similar?
Essentially, yes.
Okay.
He also suggests exploring ways to incentivize disclosure. Ethical payouts often pale in comparison to black market values, so he's floated ideas like auction systems for vulnerabilities where legitimate companies could compete with black markets to offer fair prices, making ethical disclosure financially viable.
Interesting idea. Make the ethical path more appealing financially.
It ties back to Alberto losing millions in crypto while jailed, contrasting with what a malicious actor might gain.
Aligning incentives is crucial. And what about the legal frameworks themselves? They seemed completely out of date.
Updating legal frameworks is paramount. Laws must clearly distinguish different online activities, for instance, between a defacement meant to highlight a vulnerability and actual data theft or extortion. As we discussed, Uruguay's past deficiency here was critical.
Define the crimes properly.
Yes. He also emphasizes the desperate need for strict evidence handling protocols. This means proper forensic procedures for digital evidence, preventing phones from staying connected after seizure, and secure handling of hard drives to maintain the integrity and chain of custody of digital proof, not leaving hard drives on the floor.
Basic competence in handling digital evidence. And finally, a reallocation of resources and accountability.
Exactly. He argues for a shift in law enforcement focus from pursuing noisy activists or small fish to targeting silent and dangerous predators, the organized cybercriminal groups causing massive economic and social damage.
Go after the real threats.
Right. He also champions government accountability for data breaches. He argues that governments should be held responsible for data breaches that occur due to their own negligence in securing systems, fostering a culture of genuine responsibility for protecting citizens' data.
So, wrapping this up, we've journeyed through Alberto Daniel Hill's incredible story, a deeply personal account, but one that reveals these profound systemic issues. From an ethical hacker protecting records to a man unjustly imprisoned by outdated laws and glaring technological ignorance. His experience just highlights this critical chasm between cybersecurity and the justice system, certainly in Uruguay, but with lessons for everywhere.
His ordeal really underscored the devastating impact of insufficient legal frameworks, didn't it? And the urgent need for technical literacy in law enforcement, and that chilling effect injustices like this have on responsible disclosure, making the digital world less safe for everyone. It shows us, I think, that good intentions aren't always enough if the system itself isn't equipped to understand them, protect them, or even properly define digital crime. What's truly fascinating here, when you boil it down, is the sheer power of transparency.
Yeah, that really stood out.
Alberto Hill's unflinching willingness to be open about his own complex past, his vulnerabilities, his anxieties, it didn't deter people. Quite the opposite. Instead, it built this unique kind of trust, enabling a discussion that offered unparalleled insights into the human side of cybercrime, bringing together voices that would otherwise remain silent or siloed.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it raises an important question for you, the listener. In a world where artificial intelligence is rapidly blurring the lines between reality and illusion, creating ever more sophisticated deception, and where trust is constantly challenged by evolving threats, how can individuals and communities cultivate similar environments of radical transparency and courageous sharing to build collective defense and understanding?
That's the core challenge, isn't it?
Perhaps consider how being open about our own experiences, our own vulnerabilities, might not be a weakness to hide, but a potent weapon in fostering genuine connection and building stronger, more resilient communities, both online and off. The courage to be truly seen, as Alberto Hill has shown, might just be our greatest defense against the unseen threats of the digital age.